Welcome to the 240M Module 9 presentation. Our objectives for Module 9 will be group policy, DNS server managing WSUS, and updates for third-party applications. We'll also discuss firewall basics, complex passwords, VPNs, and what's next after this class is over. Group policies we talked about in a previous module, but we're going to expand on that a little bit. It allows an administrator to control the user experience at a more granular level. Hundreds of group policy options are available, such as controlling what the user can see or do. It is edited with the Group Policy Management tool. You can also use the resultant set of policy, which is a tool that allows the administrator to see what policies are applied to a user. Many policies can be applied to a single user or computer. Be careful to not accidentally undo one policy with another. So let's look at group policy. Of course, we get there as usual using the tools and group policy management. Last time I showed you how to edit the default domain policy. Now I'll show you how to create a new policy. So you can click on create a group policy object in this domain and link from here. So we'll go ahead and we'll call it test. And we'll click OK. So now we have created a policy. We haven't done anything to it yet. It's just a blank policy that has all the defaults set. And it is tied to the widget LLC internal domain at the root level. If we want, we can drop that down to, say, the marketing sales OU instead. So from here, we'll uncheck link enabled. And we'll go to marketing. And we'll say link an existing group policy. Click test, click OK, and now we can see it's linked right here. From there, we can go ahead and edit the policy like we did in the previous lab. We also have group policy results. This is also known as the resultant set of policies. So what this does is it allows us to see what policies are applied to any particular user or group. So from here, we can right-click, choose Group Policy Results Wizard. Click Next. We're going to choose what happens if you log into this computer, because that's the only one we have configured at this time. We can choose the current user, administrator, or we can select a specific user. Choose Next. And now the policy completes. It's generating the report. Go ahead and click to add. It's the same kind of security that you would have in Internet Explorer. And now we see the group policy results. So from here it says that no errors were detected, so that tells us that our group policy is set well. It's not conflicting with anything else. And during the last policy refresh, it mentions that a slow link was detected. That might have been because of our error that we just had to approve. It tells us the various different group policy object names that it's tied to. Some of these can actually be several pages long. So if we click on the details, this shows us all the different information about the different settings that we have within group policy. We can expand on those as well to do further troubleshooting. You can choose hide, you can choose show all, which expands everything. And you can see a lot of information about how group policy is applied to that particular user. Domain Naming Service, or DNS, is responsible for 95% of all connectivity problems between client computers and servers. DNS Manager manages both the Active Directory and other DNS zones. These are managed through records. Records can be A for forward lookup, PTR for reverse lookup, MX for mail lookup, and more. DNS is very tricky. It can take years to master. Troubleshooting can be difficult, and files are nested inside subzones. Zones can be Active Directory integrated, primary, secondary, or stub. There actually is a zone called a stub zone. Replication must take place between DNS servers or records will be stale. So let's take a look at DNS Manager. So we can get to DNS Manager the same way from the Tools menu in Server Manager. From here we can see we have forward lookup zones. We have our widget LLC internal. And we can see a whole bunch of subfolders under there. We also see an MSDCS, which is required for Active Directory to work. And inside here we see A records. These A records are forward lookup zone records. So if we ping DC01, it uses this A record to tell us it's at 192.168.0.1. There's other types of records as well, such as NS records. Those are name server records. It tells us the IP address and name of the server that's running DNS in our domain. We can also right-click and create additional records. We can create more host records, alias records, mail records. Those tell us where mail can be received for a particular user at a domain. And we can create other types of records as well. Under the reverse lookup, this is where you create the PTR records or pointer records for reverse lookup. So you can right-click and choose Create a Zone. We have several different types of zones: primary, secondary, stub. And if you check this box, it will replicate with any other domain controller. So primary zone is our default. It creates a full copy of the zone. Secondary is a type of zone if you want another server to be the primary, and this one just to receive information only in a read-only copy. And a stub zone is a type of zone that allows you to look back to the primary zone for every lookup. So there's two different reasons for these types of zones. A secondary zone would be if you had a location that had a very slow network link. You would want to have a copy of that zone so it doesn't have to look to the primary every time it needs to do a lookup. A stub zone is for when you have a very fast link, where you don't have a lot of storage space, but you have a fast link back to the primary zone because it looks back to the primary zone rather than keeping a copy like the secondary zone does. Click Next. Click Replicate to all DNS servers. We're doing an IP4, and we put in our network ID, which is 192.168.0. That is our subnet. And allow only secure updates, and finish. So now we see a reverse lookup zone, and this is called a forward lookup zone. So one goes by IP address to name. This goes name to IP address. Microsoft Windows Server Update Services, added as a role in Server Manager, and enables the deployment of the latest Microsoft product updates from Server 2003 all the way on up. Allows full management and distribution of updates that are released through Windows Update to LAN computers. So this is used instead of having every single individual computer go out to the internet to Microsoft Windows Updates to download updates. This will do it all in one place. It distributes those updates of Microsoft products from the server. Windows Server Update Services server, it's installed inside the corporate firewall. Updates can be installed on any Windows computer in the domain. A WSUS server can be the update source for other servers within the organization. So you can have multiple WSUS servers. At least one WSUS server must connect to Microsoft to get the updates. It can distribute that to other WSUS servers, and then it can go out to the hosts themselves. Automatic updates enables both server and client computers to receive updates from Microsoft Update or from a WSUS server, and this is configured from the control panel, automatic or Windows Updates area. Microsoft Update publishes updates for the following products: Windows operating systems, Exchange Server, SQL, Microsoft Office, and various other Microsoft applications. Specific updates can be set to download automatically based on the following criteria: based on the product or product family, update classification such as critical updates, or drivers, language such as English, Japanese, that kind of thing. If you add the other languages, then you can expect to have a lot more space used on your hard drive, by the way. In addition, administrators can specify a schedule for synchronization to initiate automatically. Automated actions for updates are determined by the administrator's approval. An administrator must approve every automated action to be carried out for the update. Approval actions include approve, remove, that's if you have one that doesn't go well, or decline because it might cause a problem with an application, say on your workstations. So let's take a look at Windows Server Update Services. Again, you can find that under the Tools in your Server Manager. So let's go ahead and close Group Policy, and we'll go to Tools, Windows Server Update Services. Okay, so here's our options. We can update source and proxy. Here's our products and classifications we talked about earlier, the different classifications you may want to choose. You can choose your languages here, automatic approvals here for certain types of updates. You can do a synchronization schedule. You can choose which computers get which updates. Server cleanup wizard for old updates. You can do a reporting on how the updates went. You can have emails sent to you on how they went as well. You can do some other personalization and things like that. Here's our reports. You can get to various different summaries, lots of different ways to report. You have synchronizations if you have another server set up. You also have downstream servers that you can send the updates to, computers, and the updates themselves. So that's sort of an overview of Windows Server Update Services, and you can certainly customize those and add those as you add more computers to your organization. If you want to update third-party applications, Microsoft has a product that allows that as well. It's not part of the Windows 2012 standard version. It is a special application called System Center Configuration Manager, and it assesses, deploys, and updates servers, client computers, etc. But it does it on more than just Windows products. It also does it on third-party applications, as well as drivers, system BIOS updates. You can do desktop, laptop, servers, mobile devices as well. So all kinds of updates can be used through can be updated through the SCCM. We don't have a demo of that because that is a specialized application, but there are separate classes for that kind of thing. We're going to talk a little bit about firewalls. So firewalls evaluate traffic and decide which traffic to forward and which traffic to drop. The criteria for deciding which action to take is called a filter, and filters can be based on information in packet headers, such as source address, protocol used, and many other factors. Advanced firewalls can look into packets at the application layer, performing deep packet inspection. Firewalls can be relatively simple, or they can be very complex. Firewalls can be categorized into the following groups: personal firewalls, such as the Windows firewall, and others built into anti-malware products. So every Windows operating system from Windows XP Service Pack 2 on had a built-in Windows firewall. You can also use a firewall built into a router. Usually that's an add-on to a router that you can have if your router doesn't have that built into it. By default, you can have hardware firewalls. Those are firewalls such as a Cisco ASA and SonicWall, that kind of thing. And there's low-end and high-end versions as well. There is the proxy firewall, and then there is the server firewall. Personal firewalls designed to protect a single computer, or less frequently a SOHO network that is sharing a single connection. Many operating systems now ship with personal firewalls, such as all Windows operating systems. Router firewalls, many routers ship with firewall features in them. Router firewalls are a very convenient choice and can allow both functions to be managed as one entity. If it's not shipped with them, like I said earlier, you can have that added on. Many Cisco routers are like that as well. Hardware firewalls, either low or high-end. Hardware firewalls are devices that are dedicated to firewall functions and typically have limited routing capabilities. So you can't do a lot of routing like you can with a router, but the hardware firewall is designed just to do firewalling only and has more advanced features than the router with the firewall add-on. Server firewalls, firewall software running on the standard server operating systems. So Windows 2012, of course, comes with one of those, which I'm going to show you here shortly. And we've got the Windows Firewall Advanced options, which is what we're going to go over. So if you've got to make a change to your firewall, then let's go ahead and take a look at how to do that. So we're going to go to our control panel, and we're going to choose Windows Firewall. Now from here, the firewalls are automatically turned on by default. You have domain networks, private networks, and guest or public networks. So domain networks is what you have in this particular case. DCO1 is a domain network. Private network would be if you're not part of a domain, but you're in your home or your office where you know no one else is going to be connecting to your network. And a guest or public network is the type of network where you're out at, say, a Starbucks or McDonald's connected to their Wi-Fi where you need additional security. So each one of these has different firewall rules based on your location. The domain and the private networks have more relaxed rules, whereas the guest or public networks has more strict rules because you should be more concerned about other people trying to attack you at that point. So you can turn the firewall on or off by clicking on this option. If you turn it off, of course, you'll get all kinds of notifications saying it's not a good idea. You can restore the defaults if you made all kinds of changes and things aren't working correctly. Just click on Restore Defaults to bring you back to factory defaults. You can change notification settings as well to let you know when there's a blocked application that you may want to turn on. And then you can choose whether or not to allow that. And we'll go ahead and click on Advanced Settings. And you can see there are inbound rules and there are outbound rules. So inbound rules for any traffic that comes inbound, outbound is any traffic goes outbound. So by default, all traffic outbound is pretty much allowed, whereas most traffic inbound is not. So let's say we need to add a new rule. So let's go ahead and click New Rule. So you have several choices here. One is a program. So if you know a program that uses a specific port, you can just go ahead and choose the program and Windows will automatically know what port that uses. You can add a specific port if you want to just manually type in the port number. You can also choose predefined, such as certain Windows functions that you would like to open or close, such as network discovery. A lot of people find network discovery is turned off on their computer, and this will automatically turn that on. And then you can use a custom rule as well, where you go ahead and create a type of rule that is all custom. Let's go ahead and choose the port option. That's going to be the most common. You can choose either TCP or UDP, and you can choose either all ports, which would of course not be recommended, or specific ports. So let's say that we've decided to add a new application and it uses port 3390 and it's TCP. So we're going to allow the connection. We can also choose allow it if it's secure. That means if it's encrypted. Or we can block the connection. Well, this is a non-encrypted port, so we're going to go ahead and choose allow the connection. We're going to allow it on all three network types. Because if we add another network card, it's going to prompt us for what type of network type it is, and if we choose a different network type, then it'll also be covered. And we're going to call this custom app. We can also put in a description if we want, and then click Finish. So there's our custom app. We can double click on it. So if we want to change it, we can uncheck it so it's no longer enabled, or we could change it from allow to block. We could go into programs and services and we can set specific programs, or we can just allow all programs, which is the default. We can change packages and services as well. We can also say which computers can connect to us, or if there's exceptions. By default, it's everyone. And you can go in here and change the port to be something different. So that's how you allow or block a port using advanced Windows firewall security. Passwords by default when you create a Windows domain are going to be 8 to 12 characters and should consist of 3 of the 4 items below. At least one uppercase letter, at least one lowercase letter, at least one number. But you can also use special characters instead of the numbers. You could use any one of these listed here. Some characters are not allowed as well. VPNs, a computer network that uses a public telecommunication infrastructure to provide remote offices or individual users with secure access to their organization's network. Uses various forms of encryption. There's lots of different choices for encryption and can be implemented in a variety of ways. Windows 2012 supports multiple VPN types. Point-to-point tunneling protocol is the least secure because it is secured using a password, and it is often blocked by hotels. L2TP is secured using a certificate, but is less often used because of the complexity during setup and the slow speed. SSL VPN is a new one that's coming on that a lot of people are using. It's fairly simple to set up and it's very secure. It's secured using a certificate you would create or you would purchase from a third-party certificate. And it's very difficult for hotels to block it because it uses TCP port 443, which is the same port you would use when purchasing something online. IKE v2 is also secured by certificate, and the advantage is that the VPN type supports constant VPN interruptions. So if you have a slow connection, then IKE v2 may be the way to go. So let's set up point-to-point tunneling protocol VPN. That is the quickest to set up. Has the least amount of requirements. So we'll just go ahead, after we've installed routing remote access, we'll just right-click, choose Configure and enable the routing remote access. Choose Next. Choose Custom Configuration. I realize that VPN is the option, but we don't want to choose that because it sets up a type of NAT that will cause other types of connections to fail. Click Next, choose VPN access only, next, finish. And it's going to ask us to start the service, which we will. And that's it. We've now set up a point-to-point tunneling protocol VPN server. Now on your firewall, you'll want to enable port forwarding of point-to-point tunneling protocol. So what's next after 240M? We've got the CIS 288M, which is Microsoft networking, name resolution, DHCP, DNS, looking at that at a deeper level, and using 2012 as a gateway router. 289 is Active Directory, a detailed examination of Active Directory concepts, including sites, domains, forests, and AD replication. You do not have to take these in order. You can take them in whatever order you prefer. In conclusion, we talked about group policy, DNS manager, managing Windows software update services, and then updates for third-party applications. We also did firewall basics, complex passwords, VPNs, and we talked about what's next. And that is it for the 240M module lectures.